Hey everyone, I'm here to help you relax and drift off tonight. If you enjoy using these videos to fall asleep, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more calming content. Share where you're watching from and what time it is for you. I'd love to know. Now settle into a cozy spot, take a deep breath, and let's start unwinding together. Cassian Marlowe grew up poring over his father's maps, charts of mountain passes and merchant routes, each corridor neatly plotted. But the more maps he studied, the more hungry he became for places uncharted. The abyss of whispers, the cavern of shattered time, and above all, Halcyon Manor's legendary staircase. When his father's passing left him a small inheritance, Cassian seized the opportunity. He traveled by moonlight coach to Greymore Lane, pack slung across his back, heart thrumming at the thought of discovery. Evening's chill followed him up the winding drive. Wind tugged at his coat. Before him, Halcyon Manor yawned like a cavern of secrets. The front door yielded to his push. No lock barred the way. The hall lay dark and cavernous, dust motes dancing in his lantern's beam. Grand portraits lined the walls, their subjects' eyes seeming to track him. At the hall's far end rose the Stair of Echoes, a sweeping curve of mahogany steps, wrought iron balusters entwined like sinew. Cassian ascended, expecting the landing and corridor described in his sketchbooks. But on the 10th step, the staircase curved back under itself, depositing him on the marble floor. He swallowed. A trick of the light, he muttered, climbing again. By torch's flicker, he counted 50 steps, but the staircase still looped below. Each time he climbed, he glimpsed a landing that vanished when he neared it. A door ajar on a chamber lit by candles, a hallway of stained glass. He realized the stairs were alive. Night deepened as Cassian climbed. With each tread, he heard whispers rising from the wooden risers, snatches of conversation, laughter, tears, arguments long ended. The wood vibrated with echoes. "Why did you leave me? I thought you were gone forever." "Stay." Each voice pulled at Cassian's mind, stirring memories of his own regrets. The sister he'd neglected, the promise he'd broken to his dying father. He paused, hand trembling on the railing. The staircase seemed to judge him, straining to repeat those pleas. Steeling himself, Cassian whispered into the dark, "I'm here." "I remember." The staircase sighed, a soft creak of release, and for the first time, a single step glowed like ember. He placed his foot on it and rose to a genuine landing, a small antechamber bathed in moonlight. In the antechamber stood 3 doors, each carved with a symbol, a weeping rose, a raven in flight, a broken hourglass. Above them, a frieze read, "Choose the path your heart must carve." Cassian examined the rose door. Behind it, he heard soft sobs, his sister's voice beckoning forgiveness. The raven door murmured of secrets, promises locked away. The hourglass whispered of time lost beyond reclaim. He chose the rose. Pushing the door open, he entered a sunlit garden, impossible in the manor's depths. At the fountain's edge knelt a ghostly figure, his sister, lost to an illness years ago. Tears sprung to Cassian's eyes. She reached to embrace him, but as he drew near, the garden dissolved into droning wood. He staggered back through the rose door to the antechamber, heart pounding but burden lighter. Cassian returned to the staircase. The steps gleamed faintly under his lantern, as though marking a new path upward. He climbed again, each step now steady. Voices still whispered, but now softer, soothed. After what felt like hours, the staircase delivered him to a landing, lit by dawn's first light. The main corridor, high windows gleaming pale gold. He crossed back to the antechamber and opened the raven door. Within, he found a dusty study of Silas Vale, the manor's long-dead master. Scrolls lay unrolled, declarations of love and guilt never sent, maps of realms forsaken, plans for voyages never taken. Among them, a letter to Cassian's family, an apology for betrayal, an expression of hope the next generation would do better. Tears stung Cassian's eyes as he read forgiveness granted across centuries. At last, Cassian faced the broken hourglass door. He entered a chamber lined with mirrors reflecting endless corridors, each an echo of steps not taken. At the center, a shattered hourglass dripped silver sand onto a marble plinth. The palace of time itself had fractured. Cassian knelt, scooping sand. He thought of his wasted years chasing maps, ignoring the moments he could have shared with loved ones. He let the sand flow between his fingers, each grain a memory past. Then softly he whispered, "I will choose each moment." The sand stilled. In that instant, the mirrors cracked, revealing sunlight. The hourglass mended itself. Cassian rose, heart resolute. He returned to the grand staircase. Its first step now led to the great gallery, an opulent hall he had only glimpsed in abandoned blueprints. Morning light streamed through stained glass, illuminating portraits he now recognized as redeemed souls. His sister smiling, Silas Vale hopeful, other faces of the forgotten. As Cassian descended to the front hall, the staircase behind him shimmered, then lay still. No longer would its steps wander hopelessly. They guided those who climbed with honest heart. Cassian locked the manor's doors behind him and returned to Greymore Lane, carrying no maps but a memory of paths redeemed. In his journal he wrote, "Where steps once strayed, truth now guides. The stair of echoes leads where hearts dare follow." Cassian became Halcyon Manor's new custodian, opening its doors to those lost in grief or regret. Each visitor ascended the staircase, faced their truths in the antechamber, and found their own redemption. And when night fell, no one left wandering in endless loops, each step now true beneath their feet. The townsfolk speak of Halcyon Manor anew, not as a trap of endless stairs, but as a beacon of hope, where even the most wayward step can find its rightful landing, if one only has the courage to climb. 17-year-old Marin Blackwood worked at the harbor, hauling crates of salted fish as the sun slipped beneath the waves. A sudden tolling burst from the church tower, low and insistent, once, twice. Marin's breath caught. The harbor fell silent. Nets drooped, horses neighed in confusion. Gulls wheeled away at the sound. He turned toward the hilltop where St. Edrins loomed. Without thinking, he dropped his load and began to run. Behind him, fishermen shouted warnings, but the second toll summoned him onward, an urgent command he could not ignore. By the time Moran reached the wharf's edge, the tide had surged high. A dozen fishing boats lay smashed against the breakwater as a rogue wave, unnatural in its suddenness, crashed ashore. Seamen clung to driftwood. Some, like Marin's closest friend Jonas, were missing beneath the foam. When Marin dove in after Jonas, the bell's last echo faded, swallowed by wind and water. Greyhaven's first tragedy after decades of silence had begun. In the days that followed, Greyhaven reeled. The harbor was closed, the missing mourned, and insurance claims piled high. Marin found work in St. Edrins Library, helping curate old logs. There he met Father Alric Dawson, the church's priest and unofficial town scholar. Father Alric showed Marin a vellum chronicle listing every toll of the bell, each entry paired with a calamity: famine, plague, fire, betrayal at the spring fair. Not once did a toll precede safety. Alric, the bell is older than the church itself. It was forged in the foundry of foreboding, an order intent on binding fate to iron. Marin, can the bell be silenced? Alric, legends say only one with a soul unmarked by fear may climb the tower and ring it back into slumber, but at great cost. Marin's heartbeat faltered. He had lost Jonas. Now he wondered whether the bell had saved lives by warning or doomed them by heralding death. A fortnight later, as the town repaired the wharf, the bell tolled again at dusk, 3 times, slow and mournful. Marine froze in the square. He recognized the pattern. 3 chimes meant a betrayal. The townsfolk exchanged fearful glances. Merchants locked doors. Even the tavern's revelers fell silent. Marin thought of his sister, Eleanor, who worked at the mayor's manor. He sprinted toward the grand estate, 2 cobbles wide of panic. There he found Eleanor arguing with the mayor's steward, accusing her of stealing family funds. In her anger at false accusation, she threatened to expose the steward's own embezzlement to the king's envoy arriving at dawn. Marin grabbed her arm. "Don't do it. The bell tolled for betrayal. Don't betray your own heart." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "If I stay silent, he'll ruin us." Marin pulled her into his arms. "Let me help you clear your name, together." That night, Marine and Eleanor gathered evidence, confronted the steward, and presented the proof to the mayor in a private council. The steward confessed, and Eleanor's reputation was saved, averting a tragedy of disgrace and exile. At dawn, the bell lay silent. Father Alric now believed Moraine was the one destined to still the bell. He led Moraine to the base of the tower on the eve of a brewing storm. "Once you silence the bell, its warnings cease forever. But remember, you carry the knowledge of fate in your soul. No burden is lighter for having no warning." Marin ascended the spiral staircase as thunder rattled the stones. Each step felt heavier as memories of the wave and the betrayal weighed on him. At the belfry, the bell loomed, scarred with runes. He placed his hands on the clapper and hesitated. Fear whispered, "If you silence me, tragedy will strike without warning." Yet he recalled Jonas's name, Eleanor's tears, the courage he had found. Gritting his teeth, he wrapped rope around the clapper and drew the brake lever. The bell groaned, then stilled, its voice sealed in silence. At dawn's first light, Greyhaven awoke to a calm sea and clear sky. The newly mended wharf gleamed. Eleanor stood free of fear. No envoy brought accusations. Marin descended to the square. No bell tolled. The town exhaled relief. Yet as the days passed, Marin noticed small tragedies unfolding without warning. A runaway carriage nearly crushed a child. A barn fire broke out while farmers slept. A merchant ship foundered in unexpected fog. Without the bell's chime, no one knew to brace for misfortune. Marin's heart grew heavy. He had silenced fate's herald, yet the tragedies continued, undone by unheeded warnings. Guilt clawed at him. Realizing fate could not be banished, Moraine returned to Father Alric. "We must awaken the bell once more," he said, "to guide our hearts by its warning, so we may act and lessen the blow." Alric nodded gravely. Together they climbed the tower. Marin loosened the brake rope. His fingers trembled as they released the lever. The bell shuddered, then rang, low and clear, its first toll since the summer's eve. The sound shook Greyhaven awake. Below, children paused their play. Watchmen manned the ramparts. Farmers bolted barn doors. The runaway carriage halted before the gate, the barn lorded over by the sootless beams. The merchant ship steered clear of the fog bank. Marin listened as the bell tongued twice more, once for flood and once for plague. The townsfolk hurried to reinforce levees and distribute medicines. When the final toll faded, no floodwaters rose, no fever spread. Fate had been tempered by forewarning. Marin became saint. Edrin's keeper of the bell, his bell tower lantern burning each dusk. He and Father Alric recorded each toll in a new chronicle, pairing its pattern, once for sea, twice for betrayal, 3 for fire, etc., with the wisdom to act. Greyhaven learned that the bell did not bring tragedy, but offered a choice: heed its call and prepare, or ignore it at their peril. And on nights when the wind still carried a solemn whisper through the streets, Marine would climb the stairs, placing his hand on the cold bronze. He understood at last the bell's true gift. To know the coming storm is not to invite darkness, but to arm the soul with hope. Margaret Maggie Owens, a scholar of medieval lore, arrived in Vesper Hollow with a battered journal in hand. Its pages, yellowed with age, contained a single sketch: a door without a house, hidden in the walls of Ravenscar. Only the lost shall find it. Intrigued by its ambiguity and by whispers that the village archives held secret access codes, Maggie set about unraveling the door's whereabouts. By day, she scoured parish records, noting every reference to Ravenscar Manor, the melancholy of Lady Althea Ravenscar, the architect who vanished, the alchemist Silas Crow, last seen dragging crates into the south wing, and the night of flames and screams that drove the manor's inhabitants mad. None mentioned the door directly, yet every account hinted at something buried, something best left alone. On the eve of All Hallows, Maggie ventured to the manor's ruins at dusk. Moonlight gilded broken pillars and collapsed archways. Following her grandfather's old survey maps and a cryptic verse from the journal, she discovered a moss-grown keyhole carved in the western boundary wall. Where shadows cross and ivy weaves, the keeper's key your hand achieves. Trembling, Maggie fitted a rusted iron key she had found in the archives into the keyhole. The stone grated, and the door, a panel of blackened oak ringed by iron, swung inward to reveal a narrow staircase spiraling down into darkness. From below rose a low, breathless whisper, as though the house itself was inhaling hope and exhaling dread. By lantern light, Maggie descended the spiral steps. The air grew humid, laden with the scent of damp earth and something fouler, rot tinged with metallic tang. At the bottom lay a circular chamber, its walls covered in blood-red runes and alchemical symbols. In the center stood a stone sarcophagus, carved with the likeness of a man in tattered robes, Silas Crow, the alchemist who once sought immortality. As Maggie approached, the runes flared, glowing with inner fire, and the sarcophagus lid shifted. A dry wind gusted, knocking her lantern askew. The whisper of ages curled around her ears. He who trespasses must bear the curse. From the sarcophagus rose a dark mist, coalescing into humanoid shape, eyes empty voids, mouth a silent scream. Maggie's heart thundered as she stumbled backward. The cursed alchemist stepped forward, his voice a rasp that echoed without sound. You have unlocked what should rot in time. Now the curse of Ravenscar shall follow you until blood redeems it. Maggie fled up the stairs, the lantern's flame guttering. She burst through the door and slammed it shut behind her. The runes in the stone wall faded to nothing, the keyhole sealing as though it had never existed. Yet the air bore a tremor of dark energy. Maggie fled back to her lodging, unaware that a single droplet of alchemical ichor glinted on her hand, a bridge between the living and the damned. Over the following days, Vesper Hollow fell under the curse's shadow. Crops wilted at night, wells ran blood-tinged, and villagers awoke to nightmares that felt too real. Loved ones accusing them of unspeakable deeds, whispers urging them to betray each other. Maggie's journal entries grew frantic. October 31. I feel it in my bones, this taint. Silas Crow's malediction grows. When Maggie confronted the local vicar, he trembled. The curse blooms wherever that key touched earth, he whispered. We must return to the vault and reseal the door before the darkness consumes us all. On the next moonless night, Maggie led the vicar and two trusted villagers, blacksmith Garrick Holt and healer Lysandra Vale, back to Ravenscar's ruins. Lanterns cast quivering pools of light as they refound the concealed keyhole. The alchemist's moldy key fit once more, and the door groaned open. In the vault of Silas Crow, the sarcophagus lay open, but empty. The cursed mist had vanished. The runes flickered, then glowed like dying embers. Maggie raised her lantern to the crypt's ceiling, where scratched in chipped plaster was a final incantation. Redeem the blood, absolve the maker, bury the key, and bind the breaker. Garrick stepped forward, blood smearing his gauntlet, and pricked his palm on the key's jagged edge. His crimson drop landed on the sarcophagus stone. The runes flared white, then faded. Lysandra chanted anointed prayers. The door trembled and closed itself, sealing behind them with finality. Come sunrise, Vesper Hollow stirred. Wells ran clear, fields lifted their heads, and nightmares fled. Maggie emerged from the ruins, her journal thick with warnings. The key, now sealed within the buried vault, had broken the alchemist's curse. In the weeks that followed, Maggie published the Chronicles of Ravenscar, documenting the door, the vault, and the redemption ritual. The village erected a memorial at the manor's edge. Here lies the door that should not open, sealed by blood and sacred word. Travelers still spoke of faint clicking beneath the fallen stones, but no one ever found the keyhole again. Maggie and her companions formed the Order of the Iron Key, a secret brotherhood sworn to guard the knowledge of the door. They patrolled the ruins, replaced crushed lanterns, and ensured no curious hand ever pried those stones apart. And on nights when the wind moaned through the pines, the villagers of Vesper Hollow slept soundly, safe in the promise that some doors, once wisely forgotten, must never open again. Evelyn Crow, a historian of folk superstitions, arrived in Raven's Hollow at dawn, her satchel heavy with journals and her mind alight with theories. She'd heard of Blackbriar's shifting stones in an obscure folio and vowed to document the phenomenon. By day, she surveyed the cemetery, sketching epitaphs. Beloved Mother, 1872 to 1929, Infant Thomas, 1910, Judge Randolph, 1798 to 1854. Nothing seemed amiss, yet. On her third night, she hid behind a broken mausoleum as a church clock tolled 11. When the 12th chime rang, mist seeped among the stones, and Evelyn saw names curling like ink on damp marble. The Infant Thomas stone now read Clara Whitlock, 1879 to 1952. Her breath caught. She dashed back to town, determined to capture the change. But her notes upon inspection in her inn-room showed only the originals. The shifting stones denied proof, unless she witnessed them firsthand. Undeterred, Evelyn returned the next night, this time planting strips of cloth at each headstone's base to mark her positions. As midnight neared, the air grew cold, and wind wove through the tombs like sorrowful voices. At the final toll, she saw the names melt into new letters. Judge Randolph's stone now read, Emmeline Gray, 1835 to 1901. Beloved Mother became Samuel Orr, 1899 to 1923. Clara Whitlock turned to Henry Barron, 1802 to 1888. Evelyn's lantern flickered. She pressed her cloth against the marble, only to find it clean and untouched. The stones had rewritten history, but her physical evidence vanished. Heart pounding, she realized she must find a way to capture the change in an immutable record. The following morning, Evelyn sought out Abel Hart, the town's cartographer and amateur photographer. Abel agreed to help, using photographic plates to capture the headstones at midnight. That night, they set up tripods among the crypts. As the clock neared 12, Evelyn held her breath. Abel clicked the shutter at the final chime. When developed at dawn, the plates revealed the post-midnight names exactly as the stones now bore. Proof the change was real. But on the edges of the images lurked shadowy figures, dark shapes by each tomb, as though unseen watchers had gathered. Abel frowned at the specters. These aren't mere hallucinations. Evelyn realized the stones were not only changing, They were anchored by something alive, the shadows of the forgotten, drawn by the moon. To understand the shadows, Evelyn and Abel visited old Marcus, the cemetery's keeper for 50 years. Stooped and pale, he tended the grounds by lantern light, muttering prayers under his breath. Marcus. The stones change because the dead's names drift through time like leaves on the wind. If no one speaks your name, you vanish from memory and from your stone. Then another takes your place. Evelyn. How do we stop it? Marcus. You must ensure each name is spoken at midnight. Give voice to the dead, anchor them in remembrance. That night, armed with Evelyn's list and Abel's lantern, they performed a vigil, reading each epitaph aloud at the stroke of 12, calling each name. As they spoke, the shadows retreated, dissolving into mist. The stones held fast. For the first time in memory, the stones did not shift. Believing the curse broken, Evelyn and Abel returned to the inn. But their reprieve was short. On the following night, the stones changed again. This time to names neither had seen. Lydia Sprock, 1764 to 1790. Captain Thorne, 1622 to 1648. Eloise Marrow, 1905 to 1906. Even Marcus's vigil could not hold the tide of lost souls whose names begged recall. Evelyn realized they faced a spiral. New forgotten names would crowd out the known, demanding remembrance. The cemetery was infinite in its grief. They needed a lasting solution. Evelyn conceived a grand plan to compile a book of unforgotten, recording every name ever etched in Blackbriar. By centralizing memory, the stones might cease their hunger. She rallied Abel, Marcus, and townsfolk. Over weeks, they scoured church ledgers, diaries, tomb inscriptions, and even folk songs, transcribing names into a great leather-bound tome. On the next equinox, they held a midnight ceremony at the cemetery. One by one, they read aloud every name listed in the Book of Unforgotten. The wind stilled, the shadows writhed, then dispersed like sand. The tombstones, old and new, held their inscriptions as the final name echoed. Blackbriar Cemetery, 1202 to present. The earth itself seemed to settle in relief. Years passed. The Book of Unforgotten was housed in the town hall, open for any to add a name. Blackbriar's tombstones remained steadfast under moon and mist, its shadows no longer gathering to rewrite fate. Evelyn, aged and silver-haired, would visit each autumn and whisper names into the wind, her promise that no soul would slip into oblivion while memory lived. And when newcomers marveled at the stable stones, she would smile and say, "In voice we find immortality. In remembrance we defy the shadows." Emery Kessler, a historian of folklore, received a letter sealed with ebony wax. "You whose mind chases the fading echoes of myth, come to Duskbridge at twilight. Observe the shadows not, understand why they gather, and beware." A friend of forgotten things intrigued, Emery set aside his lectures on medieval chronologies and journeyed to Eben Hollow. On the eve of the autumn equinox, he arrived at the village, greeted by lamplit windows reflecting on the mist-cloaked marsh. Old-timers in the inn spoke in low tones. "They say once you see them, you cannot unsee. Better to cross before dusk, or wait till dawn if you must." Emery's pen hovered over his journal. The promise of first-hand observation proved irresistible. Armed with notes and a lantern, Emery set out from the inn just before sundown. A gravel path led him through reeds that whispered like conspirators. He passed the abandoned ferry house, its oars rotting beside a dried pond. Ahead rose the arch of Duskbridge, its silhouette black against bruised sky. He paused at the bridge's foot, noting its gargoyles hunched in perpetual vigil. Each stone bore carvings, clasped hands, broken masks, tears suspended in granite. A single inscription read, "Here dwell what light has cast aside." Emery's heart quickened. He stepped onto the bridge, where dusk's chill brushed his face like a living thing. As the sun slipped behind distant hills, shadows lengthened across the gorge. Emery's lantern cast his own silhouette before him, familiar until it split in two. From the bridge's midpoint, darkness pooled. Dozens of shadow shapes emerged. A child clutching a moth's wing, a woman in wedding veil tinged by ruin, a soldier cradling an empty helmet. They drifted toward each other, drifting in silence, merging into a roiling knot of living night. Emery struggled to contain his breath as the lantern flickered. He saw his mother's face among them, her gaze sorrowful, finger raised in warning. A whisper brushed his ear. "Remember, do not linger." Emery's knees shook. He backed away toward the village side, heart pounding. Back in the inn's common room, Emery feverishly penned observations. Yet his hands trembled. Shadows of the knot flitted at the corner of his vision. An elderly storyteller, Mistress Avril, approached and laid a withered hand on his shoulder. "Avril, I see you met the shadows. They're the memories we bury, regrets, unwept farewells, promises unkept." Emery, "Why do they gather on the bridge?" Avril, "Because there we stand between worlds. Those who passed without closure drift back, seeking what they lost." Emery leaned forward. "Can they be freed?" Avril's eyes glimmered. "Only by remembrance. Cross the bridge at dawn and name each shadow by its sorrow." At first light, Emery returned to Duskbridge. The mist swirled over the marsh like sleeping ghosts. Lanterns still lined the bridge, their flames weak but faithful. Emery took a deep breath and stepped onto the stones. One by one, the shapes gathered again, fading forms from last night's encounter. Emery called aloud, "Child, I see your lost moth. May it rest in your memory. Bride, I honor your unspoken vows. Soldier, your fallen brothers stand beside you now." As he spoke each name, the knot of shadows quivered and dissolved. No scream, but a soft sigh of release. The mist swirled upward, carrying them away. Finally, Emery saw his mother among the last. He whispered, "Mother, I remember your lullaby." She smiled, warmth flooding Emery's heart, then faded with a bright crackle, like glass restored. Emery stood alone on the bridge as the sun rose golden over Blackfen Gorge. Emery returned to the village, journal filled with names and laments. He published Where's the Chronicles of Duskbridge, a compendium of sorrow confronted and memories honored. Villagers used his journals to hold memorials at dawn, names read aloud, lanterns extinguished in silent tribute. Duskbridge remains closed at twilight, but each dawn, travelers cross beneath a single banner. Here we remember, so no shadow shall wander. Emery, now keeper of Duskbridge, stands beside lanterns each morning, greeting those who come to set their shadows free. Years later, the legend endures. Duskbridge holds its nightly vigil, shadows gathering as day fades. But now those who cross at dawn bring names of loved ones, regrets, lost hopes, and the bridge's stones echo with remembrance. Shadows no longer roam hungry. They find solace in being seen, in being named, in being released. And on mist-soft mornings in Ebon Hollow, if you listen to the hush of the reeds and bear an open heart, you may hear that single whisper on the breeze. Thank you for remembering me. Edwin Rowan was a cartographer by trade and a skeptic by nature. When the Royal Geographical Society commissioned him to map Mistwood Vale and its famed Glassmere, he welcomed the journey as nothing more than another survey. He arrived at the Vale's edge under pale morning light, his surveying instruments at hand and a leather-bound journal strapped to his belt. From the hilltop, the lake spread below, its waters as smooth as molten steel. Edwin set up his theodolite at the shore's rim and noted, 0900 hours. Glassmere surface reflects sky with perfect clarity. No ripples. 9:15 hours. A flock of geese passes overhead. Their mirrored forms glide across the lake. By midday, he had mapped the shoreline's curves and the dense forest edge. Yet a subtle unease gripped him. No fish broke the surface. No breeze rippled the mirror. It felt unnatural, as though the lake resisted ordinary laws. Edwin jotted in his journal, "Further observation required at dusk." That afternoon, while cataloging sample reads, Edwin heard footsteps on the woodland path. He turned to see a woman emerge, a stranger garbed in moss-green robes, carrying a lantern by its brass handle. "Good day," she said, her voice low as shifting shadows. "I am Silva, keeper of the Vale's secrets." Edwin raised an eyebrow. "Keeper? I was told Glassmere has no custodian." Silva smiled. "Few speak of me, but I watch the lake, and those it chooses to show its hidden face." Intrigued, Edwin invited her to his survey station. As the sun tilted westward, Silva spoke of Glassmere's nature. "When the mirror fades, the lake reveals what lies beneath. Memories, fears, truths we bury. Few can bear the revelation." Edwin noted her words. A skeptic's grin crossed his face. "At dusk I shall test this." As twilight descended, Edwin and Silva stood side by side on the shore. Silva held her lantern, its flame flickering in the growing gloom. Edwin raised his portable mirror, an instrument for his mapping, to the water's edge. At first, Glassmere's surface still gleamed with the last remnants of daylight. But as the sky shifted from gold to deep cobalt, the lake's mirror began to dissolve. In the glass's place rose darkness, an obsidian pool that absorbed the lantern's glow. Edwin caught a ripple of panic in his own reflection, only to find his face gone. Silva's eyes widened in recognition of her own vanished silhouette. Edwin's voice trembled. "My reflection, it's gone." Silva lowered her lantern. "It is only the first step." Silva guided Edwin to a stone bench, etched with runes of water and memory. She instructed him to close his eyes and listen to the wind through the reeds. Edwin felt a subtle vibration, like faint voices carried on the breeze. When he opened his eyes, the lake's surface had become translucent. Beneath the black mirror, shapes shimmered, a childhood home no longer standing, laughter of a sister long lost, moments of triumph shadowed by regret. Each image rose like smoke from a hidden fire, his memories laid bare in water. Edwin gasped as he recognized scenes he had not recalled in decades. The day he left his hometown to pursue cartography, the face of a friend he had betrayed in ambition, the echo of his mother's lullaby still lingering in his bones. Silva spoke softly. "Glassmere does not merely hide reflections. It unveils the soul. What you must do now determines whether you remain whole." Edwin's heart thundered. The revelations were too personal, too raw. He staggered back. I cannot bear this much longer." Silva knelt beside him. "You may flee now, but your reflection will be lost forever. Or you may embrace the lake's gift, accept every memory, speak your truth, and regain what was lost." Edwin closed his eyes, feeling the weight of every unspoken confession, every choice unmade. He thought of his sister, gone to tragedy years before, of the friend he had abandoned, of the ambitions that had blinded him. With trembling lips, he spoke each truth aloud. "I left you, Anna, and I'm sorry. I chose my career over your trust, Marcus. I believe my map's worth more than my humanity." With every admission, the lake's darkness receded. A gentle glow returned to the surface. The obsidian depths shifted back to mirrored silver, and Edwin saw his reflection once more. Wiser, quieter, softened by sorrow and acceptance. Silva's reflection returned too, her eyes luminous with empathy. The next morning, the lake's surface shone clear as glass once more. Edwin's journal, waterproofed by necessity, contained no maps of the shoreline's edge, but a new entry. "Glassmere demands truth. Only through acceptance of memory can one recover one's reflection. He thanks Silva, who revealed her true role as Glassmere's keeper, a guardian guiding seekers through the lake's trials. She entrusted Edwin with a gift, a vial of water of memory, to help others brave enough to face their own reflections. With that, she vanished along the forest path. Edwin returned to the world beyond Mistwood Vale, a changed man. He published no cartographic atlas of Glassmere, only a modest treatise on the psychology of reflection. In towns and rural chapels, he offered the vial, free to any who sought reconciliation with lost truths. Glassmere remained at the Vale's heart, its surface as smooth as ever. And when dusk fell, its mirror still dissolved into darkness, rising wind whispers carrying voices of memory and absolution. And for those who stood at its edge, lantern in hand, the question remained, will you flee from the lake's gaze, or will you speak your heart and reclaim your reflection? In the hush of evening, as reeds bow beneath the sighing wind, Glassmere waits, ever ready to swallow the mirror, reveal the soul, and return the gift of truth to those who dare to look. Violet Drummond was an archivist at Ravens Hollow's Historical Society, devoted to unearthing buried stories and reclaiming lost legacies. When Duskrak's proprietor, Mr. Cleaver, offered her the soul glass for study, Violet leapt at the chance to prove or disprove the legends. Under the Society's roof, she set the mirror in a dust-sealed gallery, its glass dark and placid. At dusk, Violet brought her journal and lantern before the soul glass. She broke the hush with a question. Show me a soul forgotten. Seconds passed. The glass rippled like oil. The lantern's light danced across shapes, first flickers, then full figures. An elderly woman in mourning veils, a soldier in tattered uniform, a babe swathed in linen. Their eyes were empty wells of longing. Violet's breath caught as they drifted toward the surface, mouthless pleas pressed against the silver. She scribbled notes in her journal, her heart pounding. Mirrors show souls unremembered. They seek remembrance. Over the next week, Violet returned nightly. Each session revealed new souls. A cobbler who died alone, a poet erased by scandal, a child lost at sea. One evening, a slender figure in a scholar's robe stepped forward, familiar and impossible. It was her own mentor, Professor Leland Harrow, lost 2 years past in a fire. His eyes glowed with sorrow. As Violet reached out, the mirror's surface flickered. Coach rails of glass shards danced across his face, and he vanished with a silent cry. Violet stumbled back, tears blurring her sight. She realized the mirror was not a safe vessel, but a snare. Yet she could not look away. Her mentor's ghost haunted her dreams, urging her to remember. The Historical Society's director grew concerned by Violet's absences and haunted looks. She protested reclaiming forgotten souls was her duty. With trembling hands, Violet wrote obituaries and memorials for each apparition, entries in town records, poems in the archive, fresh grave markers laid at Ravens Hollow Cemetery. Each tribute dissolved the soul's image in the mirror. The cobbler's figure winked out when his gravestone was raised. The poet's lament ceased when his verses were reprinted in the Gazette. The child's visage faded when a wreath was placed at the dock's memorial. But for Professor Harrow, no official recognition existed. His disappearance remained unsolved, his death undocumented. Determined, Violet dug into Harrow's last days. She uncovered fire warden reports suppressed by the Society's board. Harrow had perished investigating a basement blaze in the very building that now housed the soul glass. She pressed the director to acknowledge the cover-up. Reluctantly, the Society issued a formal death certificate and held a memorial service in Harrow's honor. That night, Violet returned to the mirror. Professor Harrow's figure waited. His eyes, once hollow, now shone with quiet relief. As Violet called his name, he smiled, a gesture of thanks, and dissolved into the mist behind the glass. Violet exhaled. The mirror's face stilled, its surface smooth and blank as a new page. Word of Violet's work spread. Familiars of the lost, families, descendants, scholars, sought her out, each bearing stories of ancestors unrecorded or tragedies forgotten. The soul glass became a catalyst for remembrance, community gatherings in the gallery each dusk, where names and stories were spoken aloud. As each soul was named and honored, a new light flickered in the mirror, testament that no one need remain unseen. Yet with every soul released, the mirror grew heavier, its silver frame sagging under unseen weight. Violet wondered, could it ever be emptied? Or was its purpose infinite? One night, as autumn wind rattled the windows, Violet stood alone before the mirror. She whispered into the silence, "Show me the soul most forgotten." The glass stirred, revealing a small, wailing child no one recognized. She was Lucille Evern, born to a pauper family lost to famine. No record of her birth, no gravestone marked her passing. No one in Raven's Hollow spoke her name. Violet's heart clenched. She ran to the church records, too many gaps, then to the cemetery, rows of weathered stones, none bearing Lucille. Trembling, she placed a fresh marker at the graveyard's edge. Here lies Lucille Evern, 1824 to 1824. Never forgotten. She returned to the gallery. The soul glass's surface quivered. Lucille's ghost appeared, eyes bright with wonder, clutching a tiny doll. Violet knelt and took her hand. As Lucille smiled, the mirror glowed, then cleared entirely, reflecting only Violet's own tear-stained face. Years later, Violet, now curator of the Raven's Hollow archive, sealed the soul glass behind plate glass, a plaque beneath it reading, "The mirror that reflects the souls of the forgotten. Speak their names and they shall live. School children bring flowers, descendants bring letters, scholars bring fresh heads full of names. Each dusk, the gallery hosts a remembrance hour. No living voices needed to stir the wind, for the souls remembered speak softly in every drawn breath. And in the stillness, if you attend with reverent heart, you may catch the faintest echo at the edge of your hearing, whispers of gratitude rising like a final benediction. Thank you for remembering me." Thus the soul glass remains, a testament to memory's power, proving that even the most forgotten soul can find a place to be seen, heard, and cherished once more. Celeste Marlowe had not heard her mother's laughter since childhood. 2 years ago, Mrs. Marlowe had fallen ill and passed away before Celeste could say goodbye. Since then, a hollow ache gnawed at her heart. One evening in late autumn, as she hurried home from the market, a single phrase drifted through the reeds. "Celeste, come home." Her breath caught. It was her mother's voice, warm and patient, just as Celeste remembered. The field lay just beyond the last thatched cottages. Heart pounding, she followed the wind's song into Windmere, lantern in hand, determined to find its source. The moment Celeste stepped into Windmere Field, the grasses rose up like silent sentinels. The lantern's glow struck a path through the waving stalks. All around, murmurs rose. "Remember me. Time was kinder then. Stay, stay." Celeste called out, "Mother?" Her voice trembled. The wind carried laughter, then sobs, snatches of conversation she had never heard. She walked deeper, guided by the flickering lantern and the promise of reunion. With every step, the voices grew more distinct. Her mother's lullaby, her father's stern admonition, her own baby cries. At the heart of the field, Celeste found a ring of ancient standing stones, each carved with names worn nearly smooth by time. She recognized her grandmother's name on one pillar, Rosalind Marlowe, 1932 to 1987. Beyond it, a newer name, Eleanor Marlowe, 1958 to 2018. Her mother, Celeste's breath caught. The moment she read the dates, the voices hushed as though holding their breath. Then a single, clear phrase, "Celeste, forgive me." Tears stung her eyes. "Mother," she whispered, "I forgive you." The wind curled around her, warm as an embrace, and the voices rose in a gentle choir. Her family's memories set free at last. Her father's laughter rang once. Her grandmother's lullaby drifted on the breeze. Celeste knelt before the stones. The lantern's glow revealed words carved into the central stone. "Heed the whispers, but guard your heart, for memories, long silence, may never depart." She realized the field did not merely channel voices. It bound them to the wind and could bind her too. Celeste felt the memories swirl around her mind, threatening to overwhelm her heart with both joy and sorrow. She pressed a hand to her chest, closing her eyes against the storm of feeling. Voice chorus, "Stay." A chill ran through her. The voices did not want release. They wanted her to stay, to join their murmured echoes forever. Summoning her strength, Celeste stood. "I cannot stay," she said softly, "but I carry you in my heart." She retrieved a small silver locket from her cloak, a gift from her mother, and placed it upon the central stone. "Celeste, carry this and remember that love outlasts even time." The locket glowed faintly and the stones hummed. The voices rose one last time. All voices will be here in every breeze. Then they faded into a single whisper. Goodbye. The wind died. The lantern's light held steady. Celeste felt the field's pull lessen. With a final glance at the stones, her family's silent monument, she turned toward home as the first light of dawn gilded the horizon. Years passed. Celeste became the custodian of Windmere Field's circle of stones, maintaining the names and carving new ones for those whose voices joined the wind. She held nightly vigils at sunset, lighting lanterns and speaking aloud the litanies of the departed, ensuring their memories rose one last time on the breeze before returning to the earth. Travelers who passed by on quiet evenings might hear a song of whispers and look to see Celeste's lantern bobbing among the reeds. A promise that no voice is ever truly lost, so long as there is a heart to remember, in a field where voices rise with the wind. Roland Hartley, a cartographer and natural philosopher, arrived at Whisperwood with equal measures of skepticism and fascination. He sought to chart the forest's curious phenomena, to prove that shadows were mere tricks of light. As dawn broke, Roland set foot on the mossy path, logs arching overhead like cathedral vaults. His compass spun in erratic circles, and already his own shadow stretched unnaturally long across the dew-laced ferns. By midday, Roland noted in his journal, "Shadows here measure twice the bearer's height, movement slightly delayed by several heartbeats." But as dusk approached, he saw his shadow lengthen into a figure nearly twice his size, its arms branching like the forest's knotted boughs. When he raised his lantern, the shadow recoiled into the undergrowth, leaving him momentarily lit by a single star of firefly light. Lost and unsettled, Roland stumbled upon a small clearing, lit by phosphorescent fungi. There he found a hut he had not seen on any map. Its sole occupant, a hunched old man named Arbelin, wore clothes patched with moss and bark. Arbelin nodded without surprise. "You chase shadows, scholar. The forest feeds on what we leave behind." Roland pressed him. "Why do they grow? What do they seek?" The hermit's eyes glinted. "Our fears, our unspoken desires, all sown in this earth. Here, shadows root in darkness and feed on secrets untold." He handed Roland a silver mirror. "Hold this to your back at midnight. See what grows in your absence." That night, Roland stood beneath the highest oak, its roots curling like serpents. He held the mirror behind him. At the witching hour, shadows seeped from every trunk and fern, pooling around his feet. In the mirror, he saw not only his own silhouette, but a second, darker form writhing at his heels, its head bowed, its arms outstretched in silent plea. Roland's breath caught. Within the shadow's twisted shape lay fragments of regret, words he had never spoken to his late wife, promises he had broken to secure his career, moments of vanity he had swept under the rug of ambition. The forest had taken them, grown them into a living thing. He turned the mirror upward, shattered it on a stone, and fled, leaving the shards to glint beneath the moon. As dawn broke, Roland raced through Whisperwood, his feet finding paths he had never marked. The forest grew silent, as though holding its breath. At the entrance, he turned to face the grove, heart pounding. From every tree, the shadows slithered forth, long, trembling forms that converged on him. They did not chase, they merely gathered, pressing close like a tide of nightfall. Roland stood his ground and spoke aloud every hidden regret the forest had shown him. I am sorry, and I remember. I will carry these truths with me. At his vow, the shadows quivered, then receded into the undergrowth. The forest exhaled, the leaves rustled in relief. Whisperwood had tested him and released him. Roland returned to civilization changed. He published a new kind of map, not of roads and rivers, but of emotional terrain. He taught travelers to carry their regrets in written journals, so that if their shadows tried to grow, they could face them instead of fleeing. As for Whisperwood, Roland sealed its paths on his maps, leaving only a warning. Beware the forest where shadows grow. They feed on secrets we will not show. Yet on moonless nights when the wind whispers between the trees, some say the first shadows emerge, stretching, searching, ready to find the truth once more. Kaylin Audris, a young historian at Laranthia University, had devoted her life to the Iron Arch. She pored over crumbling manuscripts, emperors' decrees, prophets' visions, and merchants' rumors, seeking clues to the gate's purpose. Each text told a fragment, that the gate was bound by a vow of blood, that it led to a realm of living light, that it absorbed the regrets of those who tried to force it open. One moonless night, after discovering a hidden parchment in the university's archives, Kaylin raced to the arch. The parchment's final line glowed faintly in torchlight. Only one who knows no secrets may pass beyond the gate. Her heart pounded with hope and dread. Could she, a lifetime of questions and half-remembered truths, ever stand before the gate with an unburdened heart? Kaylin knew who might help. Prince Jareth, heir to Laranthia's throne, whose courtly life required impeccable discretion. His reputation for honesty, so firm it cost him alliances, made him an unlikely but perfect candidate. She sought audience, presenting both the parchment and her plea. Jareth listened beneath the arch's carved runes. You ask me to unburden myself, he said softly. I have no secrets. My life is in plain view. But what of you, scholar? What shadows do you carry? Kaylin faltered, then confessed. Stolen scrolls, erased records, a guilt she had hidden even from herself. Jareth's gaze was gentle. We both bear secrets, he said. Let us bear them both and stand before the gate together. That very night, Kaylin and Jareth ascended the steps to the Iron Arch. Laranthia slumbered below. Torches winked in the palace windows. The gate loomed above, its bronze surface cold and unyielding. With a deep breath, Kaylin spoke her confession aloud. Every hidden theft, every lie to protect her pride. The runes on the arch glowed in response. Jareth followed, bearing his own regrets. The alliances he had sacrificed to keep his word, the friendships severed by duty, the moments of weakness he had concealed. The arch's glow intensified, pooling at their feet like molten metal. They stepped forward, and the gate trembled. With a groan of ancient gears, the iron arch split apart. The twin pillars slid outward, revealing a passage of white brilliance so intense they shielded their eyes. Step by step, they crossed the threshold, leaving behind the city's dark contours and entering a realm of living light, where crystal spires soared into luminescence and rivers of liquid dawn flowed between fields of glowing petals. In this place, voices rose in silent harmony, echoes of all who had once sought the gate. Their regrets were carried away on currents of light, transformed into music that wove through Kaelin and Jareth's hearts. They felt their burdens lift, replaced by a serene clarity. At the end of the pathway stood a single arch of moonstone, inscribed, "All secrets laid bare, all burdens undone. Only then may you return, hearts one." Hand in hand they crossed back, bringing courage and compassion home. The iron arch closed behind them with finality, its runes dimmed, its bronze seal renewed. Kaelin and Jareth descended the steps to Laranthia, hearts light with truth. They shared no details of the light realm, only that their burdened souls were now free. In the years that followed, Laranthia flourished. The arch stood silent once more, but with a new meaning. It was no longer merely a sentinel of secrets, but a testament to honesty's power to unlock wonder. Pilgrims came to the arch on moonless nights, seeking the courage to face their own truths. And though the iron arch never opened again, its silent promise endured, that no secret, no sorrow must forever remain hidden, and that in truth lies the door to unimaginable light. Eric Breton was a mapmaker by trade and a skeptic by nature. When the mayor of Eastford commissioned him to chart every bend of the Reth before the planned dam, Eric accepted eagerly. He rode at dawn with quills, ink, and surveying tools, confident that rivers obey gravity everywhere. At the delta, he marveled as the sea lapped upstream, a silent battle of waters that left whitecaps chasing inland. Arik dipped his hand into the current, coarse with sand, heavy with salt. He tasted it and spat, grimacing. Then he followed the flow upriver, measuring depths and currents, plotting each bend with precision. By sundown, he reached the first waterfall, water plunging downward, yet below it, the river still climbed. Arik's heart thudded. He scratched hastily on his map. Reth rises through falls. Current defies all logic. Sleep eluded him that night as he pondered a river that refused nature's laws. The following day, Arik encountered old Willem, a river fisherman whose boat hung empty on the bank. "Best you turn back," Willem warned, voice hushed. "The river's backward heart hides more than salt and stones." Arik frowned. "I've traced upstream nearly 20 miles. There's nothing but clear water and peaceful banks." Willem's eyes darted. "Peaceful until the river remembers. Last week, my brother sailed those waters to fish the upward tide. They found his boat empty, hull full of the ocean's tongues, but no soul aboard. The backward flow took him, down where it shouldn't go." Arik's skepticism wavered. He offered Willem coin for a guide, but the fisherman shook his head. "A river that flows in reverse demands respect, not charts." Undeterred but uneasy, Arik pressed on alone. By the third night, the Reth carried Arik away from bright towns into dark woods. He found a village nestled among cypress and alder, its name scratched on a sign, Greenford. Yet the home stood empty, lights unlit, doors gaped open. Inside, chairs lay overturned, cups on tables half full of cold tea. In the square, a lone note pinned to the notice board read, "The tide returns, beware the inverted flow." Eric's lantern revealed footprints leading toward the riverbank. He followed them to a small pier where a boat lay half submerged, its prow pointing inland. Curiosity overcame caution. He climbed in and set out, oars unwilling to push upstream. Instead, the current guided him. As he floated past empty windows, he caught whispers. Laughter from children who once played here, sobs of sorrow too deep to place, songs from no living lips. The current carried memory itself, echoes of vanished souls. Eric's blood ran cold. He leapt into the shallows and staggered ashore, vowing never to return. The next morning, Arik awoke at the river's edge, soaked and shaken. His maps lay waterlogged. He packed hastily and followed a narrow trail into the mountains. Soon the Reth plunged into a deep gorge walled with basalt columns, each one etched with strange runes. He realized the river was carving its own path, creating canyons as it flowed inward. The air reverberated with rushing water from above. Yet below him the river still climbed against gravity. There he met the river's priestess, cloaked in kelp green robes. Her hair was wrapped with strands of riverweed, her eyes reflecting the backward flow. "You map the unchartable," she said softly. "Why?" Arik swallowed. "To understand, to prove the impossible." She studied him. The Reth carries memory backward. Its source lies in a time before its birth. Search no further. The current you follow is not simply water, but the reversed pulse of ages. Those who seek its origin vanish into the river's heart. Before he could reply, she slipped away into the shadows. Arik stood alone, the river's roar echoing in his chest. Haunted by the priestess's warning, Arik camped at the gorge's edge. At midnight, he heard footsteps on the cliff above. Cautious, he climbed to a narrow ledge where cold air hissed from a fissure in the rock. Inside, a hidden spring bubbled with luminous water, flowing not downward, but upward, feeding the Reth's backward current. Arik knelt, touched the water, and visions flooded him. A grove of ancestral trees, a council of druids chanting under moonlight. A pact sealed to reverse time's flow for one night. The druid Alariel's voice rose. "Let the river run backward, undo the sorrow we wrought." He saw the faces of those lost in childhood wars, errors undone, yet new wounds born. He realized the backward flow was never meant to be permanent, but the pact had been broken and the river cursed. The spring's runes glowed as though sensing his understanding. They seared into his mind. Renew the cycle by offering the river's reversed heart. Dawn's first light fractured the visions. Arik scrambled back to camp, mind racing with dread. At dusk, Arik returned to the spring. He had fashioned a bowl from pure silver, inscribed with his own blood-orange glyphs of atonement. He poured his collected maps, charts of coastlines, sketches of tributaries, the symbols he had painstakingly drawn, into the spring. Each parchment dissolved, releasing ink like droplets of night. The spring's waters churned. The river's backward pulse quivered, then faltered. A great roar echoed through the gorge as the upstream flow weakened. Arik braced himself as the water level shifted. The liquid mirror of the spring tipped, sending a wave over him. He staggered back to the gorge's mouth as the first true current in centuries rushed downstream. The Reth's waters roared into their natural bed, carrying the memory of ages away toward the sea. When Arik reached the river bank below the gorge, he saw the Reth flowing once more toward the ocean. Fishermen in Greenford hauled their nets. Crowds gathered in Eastford waved at the returning tide. And downstream he heard the bells of Briarcliff calling for sunrise. Arik stood at the delta, watching the sea swallow the last drop of backward water. He felt both triumph and sorrow. The river's cursed gift was undone, yet countless memories stored in its flow were lost. His maps lay dissolved in that hidden spring. No chart could ever recapture the backward-seen wonders of the inverted tide. Arik returned to Brambleford a changed man. He never wrote a single map of the Reth's unusual course. Instead, he penned the Journal of the Inverted Tide, a chronicle of his journey, its lessons, and the caution that some forces are not meant to bend to human will. The journal concluded, "The river's flow is memory. To reverse it is to tamper with the heart of time itself. We may mend our errors, but we must honor the path we follow, lest we break the current of all things." No modern atlas shows the Reth flowing upstream, but in quiet libraries and dusty archives, Auric's journal survives, a testament to a river that once reversed its tide, carrying sorrow and hope backward through time, and to the cartographer brave enough to follow its course and to let it return home. And on misty mornings in Calder's Reach, villagers still speak in awe of the inverted river and of the man who dared to walk its backward path before it found its way once more. Marisol Hadley had never believed in ghosts. An urban engineer by trade, she arrived at Ember Marsh with plans to automate the old lighthouse, modernizing its mechanisms and retiring the keeper's lantern to history. She stepped off the rattling launch as thunder cracked overhead and a wall of sea spray crowned the quay. At the base of the cliff stood the lighthouse, stoic and weathered. A single path, cut into black basalt, wound upward toward the lantern room's faint glow. Marisol climbed, dragging her suitcases through the salt-choked wind. Inside, she found the current keeper, a silver-haired man named Corbin Price, tending the light. He nodded once without surprise. "You must be the new keeper," he said, voice echoing like distant surf. "The light called you." Marisol stiffened. I'm here to install the automation gear." Corbin's gaze drifted seaward. "Tonight is the storm's eve. The light will want what it wants." Marisol frowned, but as she watched the lens spiral in its mechanics, she sensed a deeper purpose. Corbin handed her a brass key etched with an anchor entwined in willow, the keeper's key. "Trust the light," he said, and slipped away down the spiral stairs. At dusk, Marisol entered the lantern room. The vast Fresnel lens gleamed like a galaxy of prisms, and at its center burned a pale, unwavering flame. She flicked switches to engage the backup electrics, but the light died instantly. All that remained was the hearth's ancient wick, burning with soft heartbeat. From beyond the glass, she heard murmur. Not wind against the panes, but whispers, soft as prayer, as though the sea itself breathed names. Anna, Thomas, Mother. Each name chilled her blood. The light pulsed, and in its ray she saw forms drifting just beyond the cresting waves. Figures in mourning shawls, sailors with hollow eyes, children cradled by ghostly arms. A swell of compassion rose in Marisol's chest. She realized the automation would drown these voices and erase the light's true purpose. With trembling resolve, she left the dungeon's switches untouched. That night, a tempest roared in from the northwest. Marisol climbed the steps once more as rain hammered the tower like thousands of stone fists. In the lantern room, the storm's fury rattled the glass, but the flame stood firm. Beneath its glow, the apparitions gathered. A woman in bridal white, her gown tattered but her eyes bright with longing. A sailor clutching a lantern. An old man in captain's coat, his gaze fixed on Marisol with gratitude. Marisol spoke aloud, voice trembling. "I will not leave you in the dark." She lit extra candles along the lens's foot, bathing the room in golden warmth. The spirits drifted close, coalescing around her with sighs of relief. As the storm peaked, one ghost, an orphaned girl clutching a ragged doll, slipped forward. She pointed seaward. In that moment, Marisol understood. The light guided not only ships, but souls lost at sea, guiding them to shore's first safe gleam and onward toward rest. At dawn, the sea lay still, but along the southern cove lay the Gossamer Rocks, treacherous reefs known to wreck even wary captains. There, half buried in kelp, Marisol discovered the remains of a schooner, the Aurora Belle, reported missing during a gale 10 years prior. Curious villagers gathered as she led them to the wreck. Climbing aboard, she found a single journal, its pages waterlogged but legible. "We saw the light, so clear it pierced the darkness. We thought we were saved. Then the reef struck. Our aft mast cracked like bone. I pray the light carries our souls home." Marisol read the final entry by torchlight, tears in her eyes. She mounted the path in darkness, Returning to the lantern room, the phantom voices swelled. The Aurora Bell's passengers thanking her. Marisol whispered a vow. I will keep this beacon alive for ships and souls. A fortnight later, the sky bled red with a lunar eclipse, known locally as the moon's shadow. On such nights, the boundary between worlds thins. Marisol felt it in her bones as she climbed to the lantern room. Outside, the sea gleamed with crimson light. Inside, dozens of ghosts circled the flame. Lost sailors, drowned children, a mother forever searching the tide. Corbin's voice drifted through the open door. He carried a battered lantern filled with moonlight. Corbin, on the eclipse, the light must be shared. Hold this flame alongside yours. Marisol accepted the lantern. Together they held both lights before the great lens. The Fresnel spiraled dual beams outward, one golden, one pale, and the specters surged forward, their forms brightening. Each found peace in the twin lights, their outlines softening until they drifted toward the lens's glow, passing through the glass into the storm-racked sea beyond. When the eclipse ended and the moon's crimson faded, only two keepers remained in the lantern room, one of flesh, one of moonlight, and the flame burned steady. Years passed. Marisol became the keeper of Stormwatch, her hair threaded with silver as her vow never wavered. She taught apprentices in the old ways, how to trim wicks to a cry's pitch, how to temper lantern glass with tears of compassion, how to read the voices in the gale. Corbin remained her companion until age claimed him. Then she forged a new partnership with Marin, a young woman whose own soul had brushed the edge between life and death. Together they guided every ship through the reef and every wandering soul back to shore. On calm nights when a lone sailor hailed the light, he would glimpse a lantern by the cliffs, two lights dancing together, and he would whisper a prayer of thanks, whether he knew his savior walked in flesh or shadow. To this day, the Stormwatch lighthouse stands atop its cliff, flame undimmed by wind or rain. Its light, both golden and pale, reaches across the furious sea and the silent beyond. Fishermen bring lanterns of their own to its base each winter solstice, and villagers leave flowers for those who never made it home. And if you ever find yourself lost, whether upon a lee shore or at the edge of your own memory, look for the twin lights through tempest or moonshadow. Let them guide you safely in. For in Ember Marsh they say, no soul should wander unlit, no heart should endure the night alone. And in that promise, the lighthouse that guides lost souls shines on, an eternal beacon for all who stray beyond the safe harbor of life. Aurelia Hart had known only gray skies and winter's chill since her mother's passing. As head gardener at Windhaven Manor, she coaxed roses and dahlias through sunlit days, but her own heart remained frozen, a barren plot beneath her ribs. When a withered vine snapped in her fingers, she felt her despair deepen. One evening, her mentor, Old Master Gardener Rowan Thorne, placed a folded letter in her trembling hand. Seek the nocturne garden. Find the gate of ivy at midnight. Your heart's thaw awaits. Rowan's eyes glimmered with hope. I cannot guide you further, he whispered, but the garden will know your need. That night, beneath a cloud-pierced moon, Aurelia left the manor, lantern in hand, and walked into the folded shadow of Blackthorn Vale. She followed a path of tangled brambles and ancient trees whose chiseled bark held runes of an earlier age. At the vale's hollow, a ring of ivy grew around a fallen obelisk. The ivy's leaves were silver in moonlight, and at its center lay a keyhole shaped like a crescent moon. Aurelia inserted Rowan's key, a twisted iron thing, and the ivy side open, parting to reveal a narrow tunnel through living greenery. Each leaf brushed her cheek like a whisper. Welcome, welcome. She stepped through and emerged into darkness, and the faint glow of fireflies dancing over a still pool. Ahead rose wrought iron gates, aquamarine with lichen, their spires topped by blooms of midnight blue. Beyond them lay the nocturne garden. Aurelia crossed the threshold. The air was cool and sweet with nocturnal bloom. Night-blooming jasmine, moonflowers unfurling like silver sails, and ghost orchids glowing pale as lanterns. Pathways of crushed obsidian guided her feet, and benches of white marble dotted the lawns. At the center stood Eloan's fountain, an alabaster statue of a kneeling woman offering a bowl. Its waters were ink black, reflecting stars overhead. On the fountain's rim lay a single blossom, a knight's heart. Its petals burned with soft violet light. Aurelia reached for the bloom and felt memories stir. Her mother's laughter by candlelight, sun-dappled walks through summer gardens, the soft brush of her mother's cheek. Tears blurred her vision as she plucked the knight's heart, and the petals fluttered away, carried by unseen breeze. Clutching the fallen bloom, Aurelia ventured deeper, toward a labyrinth of midnight hedges. Within the maze's center, topiary beasts, lions, stags, griffins, stood frozen. A hush fell. The knight's heart glowed in her palm, casting dancing shadows on sculpted leaves. A gentle voice echoed, "To find what you have lost, face the guardian of memory." From the hedges stepped a stag wrought of vine and shadow, antlers dripping with dew. It regarded Aurelia with glowing eyes. Heart pounding, she knelt and offered the knight's heart bowl to the beast. Its antlers bent, dripping petals into the bowl. The petals formed a luminous pool, and in its surface she saw her mother's face, smiling, serene. Aurelia wept. The stag bowed its head and dissipated into mist, dissolving the labyrinth walls. Beyond the maze, a clearing of black roses awaited. Their petals curled inward, as though suffering some silent pang. Aurelia realized the garden itself grieved. It wept blossoms that could not fully bloom under endless night. She pressed Rowan's letter to her heart. "Your heart's thaw awaits." With trembling fingers, she scattered her own tears among the rose beds. The water gleamed like liquid silver. One by one, the black roses unfurled, revealing petals tipped in violet flame. Their scent wove a melody through the clearing, a song of healing and hope. As she stepped from the clearing, the first pale streaks of dawn brushed the horizon. An event the nocturne garden had not seen in centuries. The moonflowers closed, giving their last shimmer, and fireflies winked out. The wrought iron gates began to glow, guiding her back toward the gate of ivy. Aurelia emerged into dawn's gentle light. Behind her, the ivy gate closed with a whisper, and the veil's mist reclaimed its secrets. In her hand, she carried a single seed from the knight's heart, warm, alive, and pulsing with the garden's magic. Back at Windhaven Manor, Aurelia planted the seed at her mother's resting place. Each morning, a new violet sprout unfurled in sunlight. As months passed, the night-blooming garden grew beneath the hearth's moonlit lamp, bringing solace to the manor's cold halls. Rowan visited at dusk, marveling at silver vines climbing the trellis. "You have brought the garden's gift home," he said, pride shining in his eyes. Aurelia smiled, fingertips brushing a single opening knight's heart petal. "In darkness we find what light cannot reveal, and in light we heal what darkness could not bury." The story of the nocturne garden passed into local lore, a place that blooms in darkness, hidden by ivy and mist, awaiting the hearts ready to see. Aurelia became its keeper by day, tending her moonlit blooms by candle, and its pilgrim by night, marching back to Blackthorn Vale whenever sorrow called her name. And under every new moon, when the world turns quiet and still, a single violet flame flickers in the veil, proof that even in deepest darkness, beauty awakens, and hearts can bloom once more.